to be doing a floral painting. I've pulled up on my computer a nice picture of a hibiscus. And I know a lot of people don't like to draw, but if we kind of stick with simple lines, and we've kind of got an area here where my mat would go, so we're going to sort of try to stay in there. And you can also do tracings of this as well. You don't have to actually draw the flower. And like I says, you can do tracings of this. And this one sort of comes out here and comes, everything goes into the center. This one, there's a small one here. And then we've got one that, oh, a little ruffled out here and comes in. Center sort of comes out, little lines here. We're just lightly drawing it in, and of course we've got that little cone in the center right here. And the rest, we're gonna have some green leaves and stuff out here. So, but let's get started on that. And that's just a rough sketch, and that's all we need. We can expand on that. And the beauty of watercolor is when we're done, if any of the lines are in there, if you like it, you can leave it, or you can take your pencil eraser and erase some of the lines. So let's get started on our watercolor. I've got a palette set out with my watercolors. I got my watercolor brushes all here, and let's get started with my big brush. And what I'm going to do is go around the actual flower I have there. Just wet that area. Don't want to wet in anywhere, and I'm actually not actually touching the pencil mark. I'm staying outside of it, and I'm just kind of wetting everything. And what I'm going to do is we're going to add some greens and stuff. So if I got the actual flower petals wet, the greens would bleed into that, and that's what I want to avoid. So I'm just wetting the paper, and I'm actually going outside those little guideline marks, because when I put the mat on, I can always shift it left or right depending on where my flower wants to be framed that looks the best. So, and you always want your paper just slightly bigger than what you are going to mat it. All right, that looks pretty good. I think I've got it pretty wet, and I've gone over it a couple times just to make sure it stays wet. So I'm going to start in with my greens. I'm going to still use my big brush, and I'm just gonna, and when I do it, I'm gonna kind of, you know, come to a point like there's a leaf here. Just basically I want leaf shapes. And maybe here. You can see how it comes to a point, and then it's kind of rounded out here. And I'm actually going to bring that in, almost touching that. And if you get a little bit in here, you can pull it out. It's still dry, it's easy to come out. And of course, you've got your paper towels. You can pick it up. I'm going to go in a little darker greens, maybe something in here. I'm going to pick up a little yellow with that. Clean my brush, just pick up some water. And since I don't want it quite that dark, I'm going to, like that. And I'm going to actually take a dry brush and maybe, and it will blend back in because it is wet, but it gives it a little bit of character. And there's a little line there, and you know how I waited a little bit on that, a little bit, so, and I can actually take a little bit of the darker and just touch it a little bit, clean that up. And just kind of, just giving it some kind of different colors. And we can darken any of this, and that's the beauty of watercolors. You can go over top of it several times once it dries. And I'm just kind of wiggling around there and pulling that out. Maybe a leaf there, maybe there's one here. And I'm actually going to pick up a little bit of, and just the corner, a little bit of that darker. Just kind of give it a little different flavor to. And let's see, if I take some of the yellow and the blue, maybe gives me a slightly different green. And I've got some small leaves down here, and I'm just playing around back to the yellows and the greens. Put it in here, and I'm leaving some white spots. We can go in and add some different colors in there, even more of the yellows. Right now I'm just kind of filling in some of the background around it. So let's go in, touch of blue, add it to some of the yellows. Oop, I even got a touch of red in there. Oh, that's all right. Let's see what we get there. And I'm gonna clean my brush a little bit, add some greens. That leaf looks like it's almost, and you can actually take it and pull in and came into a point, bring a little loop up there. We got some over here. Right now I'm just sort of spreading it around. I'll actually form a little more leaf shapes when we actually get the flower in. And I like that touch of red in there. I'm gonna go in and touch some red, almost a pinkish color. Be careful with the reds though. You put red and green together, you're gonna get more of a brown color. And I don't really want browns. You can see it's a little there. Back into my, and this is a vermilion green, this one. This is sort of a bluish green, which is where I'm using with the reds. And maybe some of that down here. Get a touch of that red. Get some different, and it's almost even a purplish. I mean, if we're gonna have, we might as well have some color. Maybe a little in there. Let's get some more of the blue greens. All right, take a look around. A lot of white up here, so let's go in maybe just almost pure yellow right through there. Maybe in here. All right, touch of the blue greens in here. And I think I like those reds highlights, so I'm gonna add a little red there. Wash my brush off and just pull it out. All right, that looks good. I'm gonna leave it at that. Here's a little white spot, maybe we can. All right. So we're gonna leave it at that. We'll come in and actually put some leaves in, define it. Basically, we're trying to get rid of the white. So now we are going in and we are gonna mix some of the purples for the flowers. Now when you're mixing colors, it isn't always easy to tell what color it is. So over here on the side where I'm not gonna see, and oh yeah, I like that purple, so I'm gonna test it out here. This will be covered by the mat, but you can see what the color looks like out here. So we need to be careful around these edges. It's still wet, so if you touch into it, it's gonna bleed out into the flowers. So basically, I'm gonna edge, and I'm sort of wiggling, giving it some kind of, and I'm gonna take a second brush that's just got water on it, nothing else, it's just got water, and I can even dry some of that water off. Just, I'm pulling some of that color into the center, and we can actually pull some lines out like that. We are going to come in with the darker with the blacks right in the center. So that looks good. When we go back in and do the leaves, you can see how we got that little white. We can go in and bring the leaves right up close. But right now, I'm more concerned with our star of our painting, which is the flowers. All right, back to my color, my larger brush with the purples on it. Instead of doing the one right next to it, I'm gonna do this one. And I'm following and I'm wiggling. See how I'm just sort of, that's exaggerated, it's back and forth, but I'm just kind of, and it gives it a little bit of a frilly edge, not much. I don't want, okay, and then kind of pull it back in. Take my wet, now it's wet, but it's fairly dry brush. I'm going to bring some of that color, pull it back in towards here, because when we put the blacks in, you may see some of that, and then I'm going to kind of, and then dry it off as you do that. And pull some of those out. Okay, I'm going to clean that little brush, set it aside, dry it off, set it aside. Now we're going to come in, maybe we'll do this one here. So let's pick up a little more of the color. And you can also turn your paper if that's easier. I've got mine taped down, and that's not a bad idea when you're doing watercolors, because the paper does have a tendency to stretch, but you certainly can do that. I'm going to bring some of that back. And I want to get a little more, I'm going to darken up here a little bit. And I need to make a little more here. And I'm just using alizarin crimson in my blues to make the color. And I'm going to come back in. And that's even a little darker. Whoops, I'm getting a little less. Need some more water here. It's not flowing good. And watch, when you're doing it, you can see it. It's not flowing good. Go and go back in, add some water to your color. Now I'm going to pull some of this back and pull some of that color in there. And like I said, I'm going to dry that brush off, pull. And we're going to put black in there too, but that leaves some lines out here. We're not pulling the black all the way out. All right, I'm going to actually use the smaller brush here for this one here. And that one actually has a little more blue to it, so I'm going to go pick up a little more of the alizarin crimson. There we go. And I'm going to clean that brush. And if you clean it and dry it, see how we got a puddle here? I can just touch that puddle and it soaks up a lot of that color. So now I'm going to pull some lines back in here, but I've lost this separating line. I'm going to go back in and pick up some of that darker color, and then once I do that, I'm going to kind of wet it. Let's get a little of the more of the alizarin in there. I want to kind of separate those and pull that out. All right, we've got that. I'm going to go back to my bigger brush. And this is not quite dry, but it's fairly dry. So I'm going to start here. Oh, and I picked up a little pink on the edge of my brush, which is fine. Maybe there's some light reflecting in that. And I'm even going to pick up just a little more of that pinkish color. I'm going to use it as a separator here. And because it's wet, it will pull in. I'm washing that big brush, and I'm going to pull some of that, just pull some of that color back down towards the center. And get rid of that white. And do the same thing, pull some little lines up through there. Okay, we've got our basic flower here. Now, in order to make black, I don't use a black watercolor. You're going to take some of the vermilion, the green, it's the bluish green. You're going to take some of the dark blues and alizarin crimson. All three of them mixed together. If you do the green and the alizarin crimson, you get a brown. But while adding the blue, it gets so dark, it literally is black. So you want all three of them. And you can test it here. You can see right over here in this corner. I'll do a bigger swatch. You can see how black it is. If it isn't quite the color you want, add more of the darks. You can go towards the reds. You can go towards the blue. This one's a little more towards reds, towards blue. I know it's hard to see. To you on here, it probably looks black, but you can go for whatever color you want. All right, now, before we get started on that, we do have that middle thing. I'm going to take some of the color off. I'm just scrubbing. It's going to be right there. And take my paper towel. And that's kind of yellow. It's going to be in here. But right now, I want to, let's see if I get my picture up here that I was working with. You can see that center. In fact, this looks almost like a little bit of red in there. You can even add that. But this right here, that yellow, is going to come straight up through here. So we're going to try to keep that. In fact, I think I may go in and take a little bit of the yellow, not much, just kind of, oops, that's more of a green. So let's, I think I need to go and open up my paints, maybe get my tube of yellow. Since most of my yellow on my palette has more or less turned green since I was doing a lot of mixing. And I'm just kind of tap, tap, tap into the center. I know that's kind of bright, but that's fine. I can always tone that down. That's the beauty of watercolor. You can take a little water and scrub some of that color off. But that looks good right now. So now we're going to go in, and I'm going to go back to my little pointed brush. Here, it's got the pointed tip. We're going to go into that color we made into black. And I'm going to add a little more red to it, a little more alizarin crimson, because from the looks of that picture, it looked more like there was a little more towards the red side, that black. So we're going to start here. And I'm just using the tip, just the very tip. We're going to pull those out. And let's see, right there, there. Okay. And this one, I'm going to turn it so that the tip, and I'm going to tip it up. So, and the same here. Pick up just a little more color on that tip. And then here, not too much, it's just a little one. Pick up a little more color. And this one we do have to be a little more careful. I'm going to start on the outside, kind of bring it in. All right, now that we got that, we can go in and kind of do it around here. And I think I seen more red in it, so I'm just going straight alizarin. Same dirty brush. Just add a little more red to it. I'm going to wash that. I'm going to take my rounded brush and kind of take some of that color out right here. I got a little bit into the yellow area, and you see how I'm lifting it off. So now I'm going to take, now that I got this, it's still wet, I'm going to pull some more up. And I've got a little rounded brush, I'm just using the tip. We're kind of pulling this out. All right, so we got that. And I'm going to go in, and I've got a second yellow, which is a brighter yellow. This is more of a medium yellow, where the other one I was using was a yellow ochre. So I'm going to take that lighter yellow and kind of fill in a couple spots. And even take our paper towel and kind of tap in on one side. That way it lightens up one side. All right, we've got our basic flowers. We can play with that. We can add more color if we need to, but it's looking good. I think we've got it pretty good. So now we need a stem. So I'm going to take my round brush, where it's at, and I'm going to take a little bit of my vermilion, green vermilion, and the yellow, blue, green mix. And I'm going to bring that kind of down. Then I'm going to go in with my vermilion. Straight vermilion. That's more the blue-green. And come down the other side. Bring it up into there. Kind of. And by just tapping it, I gave it texture. So it doesn't look like just a flat. I'm going to pull that down a little bit. Just a flat. And I'm going to go back into my greens and my yellows. Remember, you can use the blue and the yellow to make a different type of green. And I'm going to pull maybe some stems out here. And from there, I can go back to my flat brush. And we're going to define a few leaves. Here, we're going to start out here, wiggle in, and then pull some leaves, pull a line in. Maybe there's one coming off here. Just kind of wiggle it, pull, and they can overlap. and pull that out. So you've got a couple nice defined leaves. And you can see on the background, you've got some of these other colors. Now be careful. See how this right here, I've touched this into the purple, and it's actually bleeding in. And that's fine. It looks good. If it doesn't, you can always take a brush and soak some of it up. But because it was wet, it's bleeding into here. And I don't mind. I like the look of that. So I'm just going to leave that. So little accidents like that can happen. Sometimes it's something you want, sometimes it isn't. You can take a paper towel and dab it and pick it up if you don't like it. I happen to like it. I'll leave it at that. Okay, this one. And some leaves here. And that comes in. Maybe let's make it a little bigger. And then I'm going to take a little darker blue one, come off here, and do the same thing. Wiggle and pull back. And around this edge. And we're going to come out. So you've got two nice leaves here. And I'm even going to take some of this color and tap through here. And so we've got the leaves coming in. We can even take, if you want, you can take a touch of little alizarin. Oops. And what do I have here? I think I have a hair on there. Pull that off. So it left a little line. So you can take some of the reds in here and see how this one, I clean my brush and pick up just a touch of that red. And you can even pull a little bit of that in there to change the color. It's hard to see it, but there is a touch of it in there. So let's go up and we're going to work our way around. And like I said, you see some of these white spots close? Touch it. If it's dry, you can put some darker, because along the edge of the flower you might get some darker leaves. And once you got that, we'll pull one in. Let's get some of that darker color like that, and maybe a touch of the lighter. So you've got a leaf there. Maybe you got one here coming out. Maybe that leaf's kind of turned a little bit. So you can play around with this. If it gets too dark, wet your brush. We can put some highlights on it by picking up some of the color. Make sure you dry most of the water off. And see how I can pick up some of that color? And that side is all of a sudden it's a paler green. So you can do that. So let me go underneath this flower. You're going to have some dark. I'm actually going to take a little bit of the purple and some alizarin and some of the blue-green. I'm going to come out with one here. And you can see that's a very dark. It's mostly green though. I've added some of the darker colors. And you can pull that out. Let's go back in. I'm going to add a little bit more. And you can see that goes behind. But basically, it's a leaf coming out from here. And it darkens underneath. I'm going to take a little bit of the alizarin crimson with just a tap of the blue or green. I've got like 3 different colors on here. And that. And I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to snake that up I'm just sneaking some colors. I'm not even forming a leaf, just sort of touch, and touch of the blue, maybe underneath here a little bit. It's just something in the background, just setting off the different colors here. So look around, see where else we need it. Here's a nice bright yellow area. I'm gonna wet my brush, pull that out a little bit, and then bring that down. And you can see now you got a center. Maybe over here. We've got a little blue-green one. Maybe there's a little, nice a little plant here growing. Something else is growing alongside it here. And let's see, I like that little bit of blue and green mix. Maybe over here, you got a little something going. Got a leaf here. And maybe over here, same thing. Some kind of fern growing over here. And that can just sort of go off, oh, wherever. So it just, you know, I'm looking for interest. Now we've got reds down in here. Maybe down in here we've got a little, some little red flowers growing. And basically up 1, 2, 3, a little cross underneath. I'm doing it quick and just kind of keeping it free. And then I can take a touch of the blues, just tap it here, like as if there's a few leaves growing through there. So we've got a little red there, and I see a little red here. Maybe we can take a touch of that. Maybe there's something growing out in here. We can even go into the purples. Oops, that's a little on the dark side, so let me get more water. So, you know, just, these are little fillers. Just something to get a little more reds. And if you don't like something, and here's the beauty of it, this one, maybe you don't like that leaf. You can go in, kind of scrub it out. You'll still have some greens in there, which is fine because this is a leaf area. But see how you can take that leaf right out of there? Maybe in there, instead of leaves, we're gonna put a few blue flowers. Let's get a little bit of the extra water out of there. Maybe you got some blue flower. So, you know, just because you put something on there, you're not totally stuck with it. You can find different things, maybe a few blue things up here. Let's get a little. So, and now here, if it looks a little lopsided, we can go back to the purples and see, maybe this one comes out a little further. Now, when you do that, you want to scrub a little bit in here, get that line that was in there. Then all of a sudden we have a larger petal. Let's bring those lines in. Let's get some of those darks, pull them in. So you can change things. Let's go with just a little more of the, define that outside line. And a touch of the blues. So you can change things as you go along. You're not totally stuck with one particular style. And be careful when you put your mat over it, but you know, you can sit there and put your mat over it, kind of figure out where do we need something else, maybe up here. We can take and put a little something up here that's growing. So I mean, there's lots of little things you can do with it, but right now I think we pretty much have a finished painting. And like I said, you can always go in, lift up some of the color too if you think it's too dark. You can see how you can lighten things, pull things up. But right now I like what I have, so I think I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to sign this one. So have fun, play around with watercolors and see what you come up with.